Welcome to Whispers and Confessions. There might be a twist waiting, so please make sure to watch until the end. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Let's begin right away.
Hello, my name is Julie Martin. I'm in my late 30s, and I've been having an affair with my friend's husband, Jake, for a year now. A year ago, I made up my mind and seduced him. Even today, I'm putting on some expensive perfume and lingerie to turn him on. You know, mistresses have this strange sense of confidence when it comes to the wife. It's like we believe we're more sexually appealing, more seductive. My friend, Sarah, isn't unattractive, but I think I've got the upper hand when it comes to being sensual and exciting. Being a mistress feels like you're constantly in competition with the wife. You start comparing everything you do with her, wanting to win so you can have him all to yourself. Before we really get into it, I start kissing and licking Jake's body. I know conservative Sarah would never do something like this for him. When I get on top of him, I can't help but think about Sarah. I'm sure she just lies there passively. But me? I've got Jake's body right now, so in that moment, I feel like he belongs to me, not her. It gives me this twisted sense of victory. I moaned louder, made more dramatic faces, acted more excited just like a porn star. Jake got more and more turned on, and the more he did, the more I faked it, which made him go even wilder. There's something about the thrill of a forbidden affair that always makes the sex hot. Afterward, I snuggled into his chest and asked him, "When are you going to divorce her?" It was the first time I'd ever asked. I felt his body stiffen for a moment. "Skylar is only 6, he said. I knew that if Jake divorced Sarah, this whole thing would fall apart. But honestly, I wouldn't keep seeing him after that anyway. I want to possess Jake, but I don't love him. I've told you, I can't leave Sarah because of Skylar. Not until she's at least in college." Jake got up and started putting his clothes on. "Then don't get divorced," I said. "Just keep seeing me." Jake looked at me, startled. "Sarah's pregnant," he said. I sat up in bed, shocked. "I thought you didn't want more kids?" "It just happened," he said, lighting a cigarette. "How far along is she?" "About 3 months." "Are you going to keep it?" "We can't have an abortion," he said, almost annoyed. Had I been naive? I thought since Jake and I started our affair, he wasn't sleeping with Sarah anymore. I believed he was satisfied with me, that I was enough. He even said he didn't want to sleep with her anymore and that she didn't want it either. I believed every word. But now I felt a wave of betrayal wash over me. I thought I was the one playing with her husband, but it turns out I was the one being played. That night, I couldn't sleep. Jake went back home to Sarah, like always, and although I didn't love him, I wanted him to love me. I suddenly thought of my ex-husband, who had cheated on me. That old feeling of being abandoned came rushing back. I also thought of my 6-year-old daughter, Maddie. The pain wrapped around me, and I started drinking. The next day, I went to Sarah's house. She was her usual self, offering me snacks and fussing over me. "Julie, you've got to take some of this pickles with you when you leave," she said, like always. "Sarah," I said. She turned to me, her face calm and open. How would she react, I wondered, when she learned that her perfect life wasn't as perfect as she thought? "I'm seeing someone," I said. "Oh, that's great. Who is he? What does he do?" "He's married. He's got a 6-year-old kid." "Julie, you were devastated when your ex-husband cheated on you. How do you think his wife would feel if she found out? And their kid, 6 years old? Maddie's age?" Maddie, my own 6-year-old, had been taken from me by the court after my divorce. My ex had used my depression and lack of financial stability against me. The court gave him full custody, saying he could provide better care. They said he'd be able to help Maddie with her selective mutism better than I could. "Sarah, I don't know if I can end it." I paused, then added, "His wife's pregnant with their second kid." Sarah stopped moving for a moment. "Maybe because she was pregnant too? If she's pregnant with another baby, you know he's not leaving her. Don't hurt their family, Julie. Just end it." I hesitated. "Sarah, you know him. It's Jake." Her coffee cup rattled in her hand. "Julie, stop joking. Do you believe me, or do you believe your husband?" "I'm telling you, Jake and I have been together for a year." She stared at me, stunned. Jake would never do that, she finally said. You wouldn't do that. It was almost painful how much she trusted in the world, how much she believed everything would be okay. Jake loves me, Sarah. He loves me, and I love him too. And I know you're pregnant, but he loves me. Just then, we heard Skylar crying from the other room. I turned, and there she was, standing in the doorway. She must have heard everything. Mommy, are you and Daddy getting a divorce? Skylar's little voice trembled with fear. No, honey, of course not. Daddy and I aren't getting a divorce. I saw Daddy kissing Aunt Julie on your birthday, Skylar said, her face pale. I hadn't expected that. The shock hit me, but even in that moment, I couldn't help but think of Maddie. I shouldn't, but every time I look at Skylar, I compare her to my daughter. Skylar is so bright and talkative, while Maddie keeps her lips tightly sealed. Why can't my daughter speak like that? Mommy, Daddy loves Aunt Julie, doesn't he? It's like when Daddy didn't love Maddie's mommy anymore. You and Daddy aren't going to live together anymore, are you? Skylar's sobs filled the room, and I felt a sharp stab of guilt. But even so, I left. I'd thrown my bomb, but nothing happened. Jake didn't call, not once. A week went by, and when I couldn't take it anymore, I texted him. He replied that it was over. He was going to be faithful to his family. I was filled with defeat, fury, betrayal. It was over, and I had to go on with my life. I worked during the day and drank at night. I thought of Jake, but oddly enough, I thought of Maddie even more. Had I used Jake as an escape from the pain of losing her? One day, someone knocked on my door. I thought, this is it. Jake couldn't stay away. But when I opened the door, it wasn't Jake. It was my ex-husband. I'm getting remarried, he said. But she doesn't want to live with Maddie. You're going to have to take her. I'll send child support. This man had fought me tooth and nail to take Maddie away, but now that his new wife didn't want her, he was throwing her back to me. A week later, Maddie came back to live with me. She'd grown so much in the time we'd been apart. And with her home again, I realized I didn't need Jake anymore. But Maddie still wasn't speaking. Maddie, what do you want to eat? Mommy will make whatever you want. No answer. Maddie, do you want to go out and play? What do you want to do? No answer. Maddie, how was school today? Did you learn anything fun? Still nothing. I loved her so much, but the silence was crushing. Watching her with that sad, distant expression was like staring into my own despair. Then one day, Sarah showed up at my door, her belly now fully visible. Maddie's home. Let's go talk outside, I said. I'm not here for you. I'm here for Maddie. What? Why do you want to see her? Sarah ignored me, walking straight into Maddie's room. What the hell are you doing? I tried to stop her, but it was too late. She lifted Maddie up by her shoulders. Maddie, do you know your dad left your mom because he fell in love with another woman? Well, your mom did the same thing. She tried to steal my husband, Skylar's dad. Your mom is just as bad as your dad. You're insane, I screamed. Maddie froze, her eyes wide as she stared at Sarah. I slapped Sarah, and she slapped me right back. Skylar cries herself to sleep every night, terrified that her parents will get divorced. My baby is innocent, and she's in so much pain. Why does she have to suffer? At that moment, Sarah suddenly clutched her belly and collapsed, blood pooling beneath her. She was rushed to the hospital. As I stood by her hospital bed, I realized I had never wanted things to go this far. When she woke up, in the hospital, the first thing she asked was, "What about the baby?" I'm sorry, I told her, barely able to get the words out. She turned away from me and cried for what felt like an eternity. Despite everything, watching her sob tore me apart. When she finally faced me again, her voice was quiet and full of pain. Why did you do it, Julie? Why? I was always there for you. When your parents passed away, when your ex-husband left you, I was the one who stood by your side. So why, Julie? Why did you go after my husband? I didn't have an answer. The memory of us at the amusement park with our kids played in my mind. Maddie wasn't saying a word back then either. I remember telling Sarah how thankful I was for everything, how blessed she and Skylar were, compared to me and Maddie. I'd said Maddie's dad was awful, but Skylar's dad Jake was such a good man. I even told Maddie to be grateful, though she didn't understand. That moment had seemed innocent at the time, but looking back, it was twisted. I'd used Maddie's and my misfortune to elevate Sarah's happiness, and it made me sick. What kind of person does that? No wonder I was such a mess. But now, here we were. Sarah had just lost her baby. I didn't mean for this to happen, I said. She looked at me with disgust. Maddie heard everything. She heard you say Maddie's dad was a bad man, but Skylar's dad was so good. She may not talk much, but that day, she cried. She understood enough to know. And now? Now I've lost my baby. Are you happy? Is this what you wanted? I felt like I was suffocating in guilt. Yes, I had wanted revenge. But I never wanted things to go this far. Sarah, please. I'm so sorry. Sarah's eyes filled with tears again, but they were no longer for me. You know what, Julie? I'm not leaving Jake. He's got a good salary, and if nothing else, I'll stay married to him for the money. He's like an ATM to me now. Skylar will go to college one day, and then we'll divorce. Then you can have him. Sarah, just leave him. He's a bad man, just like my ex-husband. You've got your family support. You don't need to stay with him. And even if you divorce him, I won't take him. I'm done with him. Sarah looked at me with a sneer. Julie Martin, you're the worst kind of person. You're trash. Right at that moment, Maddie spoke for the first time in a long while. Mommy, let's go. Both Sarah and I turned to look at Maddie, who was standing by the door, looking between us. I couldn't believe my ears. Maddie had spoken. My heart leaped with joy, despite everything. Maddie, what did you say? She looked me dead in the eyes. You're a bad person. What? I asked, my heart sinking. Mommy, you're a bad person, she said again. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. My body went numb. We stood there, staring at each other, until the shock finally wore off and tears started streaming down my face. My daughter had just called me a terrible person. Sarah didn't say anything, but tears welled up in her eyes too. I grabbed Maddie's hand, and we left the hospital like we were fleeing a crime scene. But from that day on, Maddie had nightmares. She'd wake up screaming every night, crying out in her sleep. Her lips, which had finally opened after so long, sealed shut again. She became even more withdrawn, even sadder. Meanwhile, I heard that Sarah and Jake were expecting again. I don't know if Sarah forgave Jake, or if Jake ever loved me or her. At this point, it didn't matter. I only worried about Maddie. Would she ever speak normally, like other children? Would she ever look at me with love or respect? How could I ever atone for the terrible things I've done? Thank you for listening to my story.